I have spent the better part of my life studying men who became great and men who lived and died without ever discovering the giant that slept within them. And I tell you now, with the calm certainty of one who has watched both kingdoms rise and fall, that the difference between these two classes of men was never talent, never luck, never inheritance, and never the favor of circumstance. The difference was always and only the manner in which they handled the one currency that no man can borrow, no man can steal, and no man can ever earn back once it is spent. I am speaking, of course, of time. I want you to sit with me for a moment here in the quiet of this evening and consider the year that now stands open before you. The year 2026 has not yet been written. It is, at this hour, a blank page in the great ledger of your life. And yet I must warn you, with the same gravity that Mr. Carnegie once warned a young and uncertain reporter sitting across from him in his Pittsburgh office, that if you are not careful in this year, if you do not awaken to the silent theft that is being committed against you each and every hour, you will arrive at the end of it as so many men have arrived at the end of so many years before, with empty hands, a heavy heart, and a regret that will follow you into every December that remains in your life. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve, but only if the mind is given the hours in which to do so. And here is where the modern man has been deceived. He has been told that time is something he possesses, something he commands. He speaks of having time, of finding time, of making time, as if time were a coin in his pocket waiting to be spent on his pleasures. But I have observed in the hundreds of biographies I studied for Mr. Carnegie that no great man ever spoke of time in this way. The great men spoke of time as a river that flowed past them only once, and they understood that the only question worth asking was what they would carry from its waters before it disappeared forever into the sea of yesterday. I want to tell you about a conversation that changed the course of my own thinking. I sat one afternoon with Mr. Edison in his laboratory at Menlo Park. The room smelled of chemicals and burned filaments, and there were notebooks stacked upon notebooks, each one filled with the records of his failures. I asked him what he believed to be the single greatest enemy of the man who wished to achieve. And Mr. Edison, without lifting his eyes from the apparatus he was adjusting, said to me, "The greatest enemy is not failure, young man. The greatest enemy is the unexamined hour." But the most surprising part comes only now, and I want you to listen very carefully, because what Mr. Edison told me next has remained with me for the whole of my working life. He said that the tragedy of the modern man is not that he wastes time, but that he does not know he is wasting it. The hours slip from him as water slips through fingers, and he calls this living, he calls this rest, he calls this leisure. But it is none of these things. It is the slow, silent, almost imperceptible bleeding of a life that was meant for greatness. Now I want you to understand something about the law of definite major purpose, which I have written about in many of my works, and which I consider to be the cornerstone of every philosophy of personal achievement. A definite major purpose is not a wish. It is not a dream. It is not a vague hope that someday, somehow, things will improve. It is a clear, written, burning desire to which a man has committed every hour of his waking life. And here's the truth that the world does not wish to tell you. Without a definite major purpose, your time has no direction. And without direction, your time has no value. You may have 24 hours in your day, but if those hours are not pulled toward a single magnetic point, they will scatter like iron filings on a table, and at the end of the year you will look down and see only a chaos of efforts, a confusion of beginnings, and not a single completed thing. Consider for a moment the lives of the men whose names history has chosen to remember. Consider Mr. Ford, who told me once, in his quiet and unhurried way, that he had spent 12 years thinking about a single problem before he ever produced the automobile that bore his name. 12 years. And in those 12 years, he was not idle and he was not lost. Every conversation he held, every book he read, every walk he took through the fields of Michigan was somehow connected, somehow tributary to the great river of his definite major purpose. His time was not divided, it was concentrated. And concentration, my friend, is the secret that the world has forgotten. What Hill discovered about this subject is deeply unsettling, and I will share it with you now, though it may disturb the comfortable assumptions of your present life. I discovered, after years of investigation into the habits of successful and unsuccessful men, that the unsuccessful man does not lack time. He has, in fact, exactly as much time as the successful man. The same 24 hours, the same 7 days, the same 52 weeks. What he lacks is the awareness of his time. He moves through his hours in a kind of waking sleep, a hypnotic trance induced by habit, by distraction, by the low and constant hum of trivial concerns. And when at last he awakens, often in the middle of his 5th or 6th decade, he discovers with a sudden and terrible clarity that the years are gone and that he has nothing to show for them but a collection of unfulfilled intentions. I want you to picture for a moment a man sitting at his desk on the first day of January in the year 2026. He has resolutions. He has plans. He has even perhaps written them down in a fresh notebook purchased for this very purpose. And he believes with the touching innocence that all of us share at the beginning of a new year that this year will be different. This year he will become the man he has always meant to be. Now picture the same man on the last day of December. The notebook is closed. The resolutions are forgotten. The plans have been replaced by a vague and uncomfortable feeling that another year has somehow slipped away from him and that he is no closer to the life he imagined than he was 12 months before. This is the tragedy I wish to spare you from. The detail most people overlook is hidden right here in the simple and unglamorous practice of what I have called the daily accounting of the hours. I learned this practice from Mr. Franklin, whose autobiography I studied as a young man with the same devotion that other young men gave to Scripture. Mr. Franklin kept, throughout his adult life, a precise record of how he spent each hour of each day, and he reviewed this record each evening before retiring. He was not interested in punishing himself for his failures. He was interested in seeing them clearly. And he understood, as few modern men understand, that what is not measured cannot be improved, and what is not seen cannot be changed. I want you to consider with absolute honesty how you spent the past week of your life. Not how you remember spending it, but how you actually spent it, hour by hour, minute by minute. How many hours did you give to the work that would carry you toward your definite major purpose? How many hours did you give to the cultivation of your mind, the strengthening of your body, the deepening of your most important relationships? And how many hours, if you are willing to face the truth, did you give to the small and meaningless distractions that have become the great anesthetic of our age? The screens, the scrolling, the aimless conversations, the entertainments that entertain you for an hour and leave you emptier than they found you. Here begins the darkest game of the subconscious mind, and I must speak of it plainly. The subconscious mind, which I have written about extensively in my studies of autosuggestion, does not distinguish between productive activity and unproductive activity. It simply records what you do repeatedly and consistently, and it builds the architecture of your character around these repeated actions. If you spend 3 hours each day in idle distraction, your subconscious mind learns that this is who you are. It builds neural pathways. It forms habits. It constructs an identity around this pattern. And the longer this pattern continues, the more difficult it becomes to break, until at last the man who once dreamed of greatness can no longer even remember what greatness felt like in his imagination. This is the principle of autosuggestion working in reverse, and it is the silent destroyer of more lives than any war or plague in history. When you tell yourself by your daily actions that you are a man who scrolls and watches and consumes, you are programming your subconscious mind to produce more of this behavior. But the same law works in the opposite direction, and this is the great hope I wish to leave with you tonight. When you tell yourself by your daily actions that you are a man who studies, who builds, who creates, who serves, your subconscious mind will deliver to you exactly that life. The law is impartial. The law is exact. The law is always working whether you are aware of it or not. What the lives of great achievers have been trying to tell us for centuries is that time is not a resource to be managed. Time is the very material from which a life is constructed. Each hour is a brick. Each day is a wall. Each year is a wing of the great cathedral that you are building, whether you know it or not, with every choice you make. Mr. Lincoln, whose life I have studied perhaps more than any other, understood this truth. He failed in business, he failed in politics, he suffered the death of those he loved most. And yet, in every dark season, he continued to read, to study, to write. He continued to lay one brick upon another, even when he could not see the cathedral he was building. And when at last the hour came when his nation needed him, he was ready, because he had spent the long years of obscurity preparing for a moment he could not have foreseen. I want you to ask yourself what cathedral you are building with the hours of your life. Are you building anything at all? Or are you merely surviving day after day until the materials of your life are exhausted and there is nothing left to build with? The year 2026 is not just another year. It is 365 opportunities, 8,760 hours, in which you may either lay the foundations of the life you have always imagined or scatter your materials to the wind and arrive at the end of the year with nothing but an empty plot of ground where a great structure might have stood. The real turning point begins here in the practical application of what I am about to share with you. There are certain principles drawn from my studies of the most accomplished men of the past century, which I have found to be infallible in the matter of time and its mastery. The first of these is the principle of the morning hour. Almost without exception, the great men I studied began their day before the rest of the world had risen. Mr. Carnegie rose before dawn. Mr. Ford rose before dawn. Mr. Rockefeller rose before dawn. They had discovered through long experience that the hours before the world awakens are the most fertile hours in the entire day. The mind is fresh. The distractions are absent. The subconscious mind, having processed the events of the previous day during sleep, is now ready to receive new instructions, new visions of the future you wish to create. If you do nothing else in the year that lies ahead of you, I would have you adopt this single practice. Rise 1 hour earlier than you have been rising. Use that hour for the work that matters most to you, the work that no one is paying you to do, the work that will not be missed if you do not do it, but which will, over the course of a year, transform the entire trajectory of your life. 1 hour each day, multiplied by 365 days, equals more than 360 hours of focused, undistracted effort directed toward your definite major purpose. 9 full working weeks of pure, concentrated progress while the rest of the world sleeps. This is the difference between the man who arrives at the end of 2026 transformed and the man who arrives exactly as he began. The second principle is the principle of the written plan. I have observed that men who carry their plans in their heads are men who carry their plans nowhere. The mind, for all its power, is a poor container for the details of a life. It forgets. It distorts. It is influenced by mood, by weather, by the small irritations of the day. But a plan written upon paper, reviewed each morning and each evening, becomes a living document, a compass that guides the hours, a contract between the man and his higher self. I would have you, before you go to sleep tonight, take out a fresh sheet of paper and write upon it the 3 things you must accomplish tomorrow if the day is to be considered a success. Not 10, not 5, 3. And in the morning, before you check your messages, before you read the news, before you allow the world to set the agenda for your day, you will sit with that paper and you will commit yourself to those 3 things, and you will not stop until they are done. The third principle is the principle of the protected hour. There is, in every productive man's day, a sacred period of time during which he is unreachable by telephone, unreachable by message, unreachable by the small emergencies that are always trying to consume the time of those who have not yet learned to defend themselves. Mr. Edison, in his laboratory, was unreachable for hours at a stretch. Mr. Carnegie, in his study, was unreachable. They had learned that the man who is always available is the man who is always interrupted, and the man who is always interrupted never accomplishes anything of significance. But I must warn you of something, and this is where the philosophy I have spent my life developing turns from the practical to the profound. The mastery of time is not, in the end, a matter of techniques. It is not a matter of planners and schedules and morning routines, though these are useful and I would have you employ them. The mastery of time is at its deepest level a matter of the soul. It is a question of who you believe yourself to be and what you believe yourself to be capable of, and what you believe to be the purpose for which you were placed upon this earth. I have observed that men who waste their time are almost always men who do not believe in themselves. They do not believe that their efforts will lead anywhere. They do not believe that they are capable of greatness. They do not believe that the universe will respond to their persistence with the gifts and opportunities and meetings that the universe has always provided to those who persist. And so they do not persist. They scatter their hours among the small and easy pleasures, because the small and easy pleasures do not require them to believe in anything. They do not require faith. They do not require courage. They do not require the terrible vulnerability of staking one's life upon a vision that may, in the end, fail. But here is the secret. The man who stakes his life upon a vision and fails has lost nothing because he has lived. He has been alive in a way that the man of small pleasures will never know. And the man who stakes his life upon a vision and succeeds has gained the only thing in this world worth gaining, which is the knowledge that he was, in the end, faithful to the giant within him. Faith is the second great pillar of the philosophy I have built, and it is faith that converts time from a meaningless succession of hours into the building material of a meaningful life. I want you to consider the great paradox that lies at the heart of this matter. The man who fears wasting time is almost always the man who wastes it most. He is so paralyzed by the fear of choosing wrongly that he chooses nothing at all, and the hours pass him by while he deliberates. The master of time, by contrast, is the man who has made peace with the possibility of wasting it. He has accepted that some of his hours will be lost, that some of his efforts will fail, that some of his plans will come to nothing. And because he has accepted this, he is free to act. He is free to commit. He is free to throw himself fully into the work of his definite major purpose, knowing that even his failures are bricks in the cathedral he is building. This is the principle of persistence, which I have placed at the center of my philosophy, because I have found it to be the single quality that distinguishes those who arrive from those who turn back. Mr. Edison conducted more than 10,000 experiments in his search for the filament that would make the electric light a practical reality. 10,000 experiments, each one a hypothesis tested and discarded. And yet he did not consider them failures. He considered them 10,000 demonstrations of what would not work, and each one brought him closer to the demonstration of what would. This is the mind of the master of time. This is the mind that sees every hour, even the hours of apparent defeat, as part of a larger and unfolding purpose. If you wish to be careful in 2026, you must be careful with your attention above all things. Attention is the currency of the mind, and the mind is the workshop of destiny. Whatever you give your attention to grows, and whatever you withhold your attention from withers. This is a law as exact as the law of gravity, though it operates in the invisible realm of thought rather than the visible realm of matter. If you give your attention hour after hour to the trivial and the sensational and the immediately gratifying, your mind will become a trivial and sensational mind. But if you give your attention to the deep and the difficult and the slowly unfolding, your mind will become capable of producing the kinds of results that change the course of a life. You will give your attention to your definite major purpose and to the books and conversations and practices that nourish it. You will give your attention to the people who lift you toward your highest self, the members of what I have called your mastermind, the small circle of trusted minds whose combined energy is greater than the sum of its parts. You will give your attention to the cultivation of your body, your mind, and your spirit, and you will withhold your attention with the same deliberation from the endless stream of distractions that the modern world will press upon you each and every day. I want to leave you, before this conversation ends, with one final thought. The mastery of time is not, in the end, about productivity. It is not about achievement. It is not about the accumulation of accomplishments that may be listed upon a tombstone or recited at a funeral. The mastery of time is about presence. It is about the quality of consciousness that you bring to each hour of your life. The man who is fully present to the work he is doing, even if that work is humble, is a man who is using his time well And the man who is not present, who is always somewhere else, who is always thinking about the next thing while the current thing slips through his fingers, is a man who is wasting his time even when he is producing results. So I ask you, as I asked myself many years ago in the quiet of my study, what kind of man do you wish to be at the end of 2026? Do you wish to be a man who has produced results but missed his life? Do you wish to be a man who has lived but produced nothing? Or do you wish to be a man who has done both, who has produced the work that was uniquely his to produce, and who has been fully present to every hour of the producing? This is the high and difficult path. This is the path of the master of time. And it is the only path in my long experience that leads to the life of meaning that every human heart, beneath all its distractions and confusions, is secretly longing to live. The year stands open before you. The hours have not yet been spent. The choices have not yet been made. And whether you arrive at the end of 2026 with the deep satisfaction of a year well lived, or with the dull ache of another year lost, will depend not upon your circumstances, not upon the favor or disfavor of the world, but upon the small and almost invisible decisions you will make in the quiet of each morning, the focus of each working hour, the discipline of each evening's review. When was the last time you sat alone, without distraction, and asked yourself what you truly wished your life to mean? When was the last time you took out a piece of paper and wrote, in your own handwriting, the single great purpose for which you believe you were placed upon this earth? If you cannot remember, then let this evening be the time. Let this conversation be the moment. And let the year that lies ahead be the answer to the question that has been waiting, patiently and silently, in the deepest chamber of your own heart. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. And the mind that conceives and believes a great purpose and gives to that purpose the disciplined hours of a single year will find at the end of that year that it has become, almost without noticing, the kind of mind that the world calls great. The transformation will not announce itself. It will arrive quietly, in the small accumulation of focused hours, in the steady habit of the morning practice, in the slow strengthening of the inner muscles that no one but you will ever see. And one day, perhaps sooner than you imagine, you will look back upon this 2026 that now stands open before you, and you will know with the quiet certainty that no one can take from you that this was the year in which everything began to change, not because the world changed, but because you, in the silence of your own choices, became the man who was finally ready to be careful with his time. The hour grows late, and I must close. But the question I leave with you is this: what will you do, beginning tomorrow morning, with the one life that has been given to you? What will you build in the cathedral of your hours that will still be standing when the year is done? And when at last you sit on some quiet evening many years from now, looking back upon the long road of your life, will you be able to say that you spent your days as a man spends gold, with attention and with reverence and with the deep awareness that nothing in this world is more precious or more fleeting? The answer is not mine to give. The answer is yours. And the year that lies ahead is the page upon which you will write it.